In this episode, I talked to George about the Democrats, the fact that he and I both don't believe they're going to win the midterms. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. They have a huge issue with the extreme liberal part of the party. And whether you agree or disagree, you can't win with fringe. You just can't win. And they try to do the same thing that the Republicans do. Well, it's not going to work. So you have to look at what is going on in the party. You have to look at why they're not winning on messaging. I don't even know if they really know who their audience is, really. And things they should be doing. We talk about law enforcement. We talk about what should be happening in education. I cannot wait to hear what you think. Leave it in the comments and let me know what you think some of your solutions would be. Can you just start with telling everyone like who you are, the powerhouse person that you are? So many people don't know. And I just think it's really important that people know everyone who's out here working on their behalf.
Sure. So my name is George Carrillo. I'm the CEO of the Hispanic Construction Council. We're a fairly new organization. We started up last year, and we sort of took off where we knew that there was this void in representation in Washington at the state level. And we're not your typical NGO. So we're more of a national think tank. So we like to work on studies. We like to talk about the construction industry as a whole. What are the ripple effects of things that are happening in the economy? Some people will challenge us and say, hey, why do you have an opinion on Medicaid? And I have to educate them and say, Medicaid directly is related to, Section 8 qualifications. If you start having people with weaker paychecks or weaker benefits or not having accessibility to Section 8, what do you think that's going to do to the rental market? What do you think that's going to do to multifamily housing? What do you think that's going to do to the foreclosure rates of single family homes? I'm like, it's all interconnected. And so if the economy is not moving, there's no reason for us to build it. So if you're wanting to invest, that's the reason when we have comment on it. So it's very interesting.
How did you get started? Were you in the construction industry yourself, or you just saw a need and started really the NGO based on need, not necessarily experience, or a combination of both?
Yeah, so it's a combination of both. So what was interesting is that I've never been in the construction business. I've never been a construction owner. I've always have been a public servant my entire career.
Okay.
So I manage the social determinants of health department for our state health department here. And part of that portfolio, when you understand social determinants of health, there's these key pillars in society that I would look at. So that would be housing, food security, access to health, education, stability and financing, access to capital. So I would look at those pillars, and one of those pillars was, of course, housing. And so I had a pretty large portfolio just focused on housing, and that was about $140 million. And I would look at to see how can I build supportive housing? How can I bridge the gap for people that might have, behavioral health challenges instead of putting them into a state facility? Is there a community resource or residential treatment facility that I can build in order to put people into care? And so that's where my developer mindset comes from. And some people saw what I was doing across the nation and came and reached out to me and said, hey, we think that there's this gap here. Would you be willing to help us? And so as one of the co-founders, there's 4 of us, we decided to do this. Yeah.
And so in your opinion, how is the big, beautiful bill going to impact what's going on? Because I know obviously I live in a new development with the construction industry's heavy Latino population. How is that going to impact your constituents and your membership base? And what are they scared? Are they scared? Are they fearful? Like, what are they thinking?
So I think because the big, beautiful bill has been sold as so many different types of things, people don't really understand it. It's very big. It's very large. And I think that for people that are trying to get that wealth or maybe have wealth and want to retain more of that wealth, they look at this as a great opportunity. They think, man, this is going to drive the market and it's going to create a lot of opportunity. And because we create opportunity, there's going to be less people that need to be on social services. And there's no statistical data that shows that that is actually true. I just want to make that clear. And I think that what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to give consumer confidence to like developers and general contractors to start building. But the thing is that when you really analyze the big beautiful bill, it only creates more of a wage disparity when we talk about the ultra rich versus the people that need an opportunity. So I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Like the big beautiful bill for like a construction worker or a construction owner. If he buys a truck, he has to prove that 100% of the time that that truck is being used for that business, 100% of the time, and then they can write it off.
Interesting.
But if you go and buy a jet, a private jet, you only need to prove that you're using it for business for 50% of the time.
What?
And then you can write off 100% of it. So who's it really? Who's the advantage to? It's the advantages to the ultra wealthy. And then when we think about weakening Medicaid and food stamps, I think that that is just the most terrible decision. And I don't understand how anyone can think that you just have to tie up your bootstraps and, you know, just walk the path and go get a job when people that are on Medicaid or on SNAP can't necessarily do that. So, you know, these are safety measures that are put in place, or entitlements put in place so that way we can help people that can't. And just like with food stamps, there's children that the only meal that they get is at school.
Right.
So why are we taking food stamp benefits away so that way there's no more free lunches at school? There's also people on food stamps that are able working bodies. It's called ABOD, but they're working. They're trying to get full-time employment. They just don't meet the like the wage requirements to where you can say that they're self-sufficient. So then there's a supplement so that way they don't have to go hungry, nor do their family members have to go hungry. So no one's ripping people off the system. You know, working in social services for years, there's no one getting rich off of benefits. You know,
that's true.
This is meant for the people that don't have, you know, enough resources, enough money to be able to provide the most basic need, which one of them is to eat. And I just don't understand why in this country, for as strong and as wealthy as we are, why we would strip benefits away from children's mouths, or people that are physically disabled that qualify for Medicaid, that need that medical assistance in order for them to get healthy, in order for them to return back to the workforce, or for them to have some sort of ability to live somewhat of an equitable life with a serious illness or disability. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, so let's deep dive into I am blessed enough to have friends on who are not as super wealthy as private jets, but pretty good. And then people who are low income to, if there's such a thing, below poverty. And the one gamut that I see oftentimes is people who believe that some people are just taking advantage. How do we manage that messaging? Because from what I understand, when I read the bill, you can expense expense all equipment off for manufacturing equipment off for the first year. So that definitely helps our business owners, because you could take that full write-off in the first year your taxes were a purchase. And in the other thing is that you have to be able, from a low income perspective, have a job in order for you to get benefits. Now, my personal belief is kids and seniors, absolutely take care of them. Everyone else in between, we can, I think the government should supplement you, pay teachers, 6 figures, and then you have to do the work yourself. Now, does that sound conservative? I don't think so, because I think cancer treatments, medicine, kids and seniors, but where does the personal accountability start and end? Because I think and this is just from me talking to so many people on both sides, that's the game. That's what's being lost in translation with the messaging that the Democrats, I think, are missing. Like, people really feel like they see other people doing well and they're not doing well. But how do you get people who are able-bodied? And again, I'm looking at comments, looking at feedback,
Yeah.
and they feel like they're not working and they're not doing their fair share, and they're able-bodied. Like the gentleman I spoke to last week, as I mentioned, he's a Christian conservative. He's really concerned about the males between the age of 25 to 35 who are in their parents' basement playing video games and they're not working. How do you mobilize them to get engaged, to work? And then the parents, and I know people who are claiming disability and they're not disabled. So I totally agree with everything you're saying, but how do the Democrats message to those people that believe that?
So I think that it's all marketing. It's all the right message that
and
we have
Republicans
to
do it well.
They do it very well. I think when you stoke fear and you stoke division, the messaging is really easy. Because I can do that to anybody. When we think about the 25-year-olds to the 35-year-olds, and we say there's a bunch of that generation, they don't want to work, they want to live in their parents' basements. Well, first of all, if you have a basement, you might be doing pretty well as a family. And if you can afford your 25-year-old to sit in the basement and play video games all day, you're probably doing pretty well, right? So let's talk about who's that demographics of those people that can afford a $500 PlayStation and afford their kids to be able to play online all day long. So we're not talking about people that are below the poverty line. Those people are hustling. Those people are working. I think that it's not necessarily like a conservative view or a liberal view. I think it's just looking at society and saying, how much are we digging ourselves into stereotypes?
True.
Because I think that is a stereotype. And then we sort of give this huge blanket that this age group is doing that. Well, when we look at this age group is also digging into AI. They're the leaders. They know how to turn these things on. They know how to build apps. They're becoming, influencers. They're going to start moving and shaking this market because for those people that we say all they do is play video games, well, guess what? Those video games are being traded on Wall Street and they're talked about routinely whenever there's an update. When have we ever seen that before in our history? That now gaming is a part of, the local economy. Well, it is now, right? Because it touches the entire world. So I think we need to be careful with, how we are sort of alienating and just, playing out discriminating against people. And then who are we talking about? Because who has the accessibility to that? So,
well, in his case, he was speaking of white males, because the conversation was, Trump won overwhelmingly with white males between the ages of 19 to 35, the Joe Rogan audience. And Joe Rogan's a little older too, like maybe baby boomers and Gen X's. But that was really interesting to me. And I guess the question that I posed to him is, where are white males? Because when you look at society, the conversation is around every other community, but the white males have essentially been left out of the conversation. Like, we're going to help women, we're going to help women's rights, we're going to help Black women, Black men, we're going to help the disabled, we're going to help the Latino community get equity and access to immigration. But where is the message for the white males? And
I think that's where Trump comes in. Yeah, well, I think that's where Trump comes in.
Correct.
And I think, and he's speaking to them, and I think it's stoking this message that they're losing out. So
correct. So that's the thing. I think the Democrats honestly have missed out, because you can't be like, it's like anyone, a kid who doesn't get invited to the party. They want to. What's the message for them as well, right? That fear is working because you're not including them in the conversation, or at least they feel that they haven't been included in the conversation. And that is the concern that is fodder and it's fuel for a lot of the racism issues that we're having in the US. And honestly, I feel like the Democrats have not addressed that. Like they have addressed every single group to the point that he said 30% of this age group has an opioid addiction.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a white mother, a white male, and I mean, we're people of color talking about the white America, but I'm just saying it is an issue that the Democrats have not addressed. And if you're looking at your mother and a father and you're seeing that, yeah, you might have $1 million home and your kids are in the basement because they don't feel engaged, they don't feel inspired, they don't have any hope, they don't have a girlfriend or whatever, boyfriend, they feel like they're not being engaged. You're going to continue to have this issue. How do the Democrats reconcile that?
Well, I think it's sort of getting back to this grassroots campaign of talking about real opportunity. And
Correct.
I think that the conservative movement, the MAGA movement,
yeah,
sort of sells this message that there's limited opportunity. And so, that the pie, there's only so much opportunity.
Only so much in this pie, right?
Yep. And if you don't hurry up and go and get it, someone else is going to take it away from you.
Correct.
And that's going to be, whether it's Black or brown, LGBTQ people,
correct,
whatever.
Or transgender.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're taking your women, all the Black men are taking your white women, all the Latino men are taking, you know what I'm saying? It's just like,
but they love our culture though. They love our culture. They love Taco Tuesday, right?
Right. Let's be honest, without the salsa, the merengue, without the blackness and the energy, like this country would be boring. But I have white friends. You have white friends. You have white colleagues. And you know that there is enough for everyone. I have a friend who's super duper wealthy. And I mean, like wealthy that most people don't get a chance to see and interact with. And the one thing he said to me, he said, there is so much money. He said, it's literally, if you have an idea, he's like now with just the access to the internet, like just so many ways to easily become a millionaire. He's like, it's easy. It's not that complicated, but people just don't know. And if you can encourage people and motivate them, then you're going to really have this environment where it's us versus them. And my thing is, it's not us versus them. It's you and me. Right. So and that's why sometimes I don't like the Gen Zers. They always say we don't like labels, but they really kind of do in their own ways. But if you could get rid of the labels and just say, what do you value most? What's important to you? And I think that people don't have an issue with immigration. They just want to plan. They want to plan.
Well, people don't understand.
That is the plan.
People don't understand anything. Yeah. People don't understand.
That's true. Can you outline like what it is for you, like what you see should be happening versus what is not happening?
Well, I think for one, so kind of getting back to the previous question about Democrats, is that Democrats, what they did wrong for so many years is that they would push people out. They really endorsed this cancel culture. So people that had a difference of opinion, we're asking people, during the DEI world, we said, we want you to be vulnerable. We want you to have safe spaces. And we created these safe spaces, apparently. And when people would actually come out and they would talk about their bias or they would talk about their racism, they would get canceled. And so that was just a very poor way of doing it. I tell people all the time, one of the people that I give a lot of credit to is George Floyd. His tragedy, his murder, opened the door to have these very difficult conversations. And we as Democrats messed it up. Because what we did is we said, we wanted to be in power. We're going to control the narrative. And now you're a guest into this conversation.
Instead of including them in the conversation. Yeah,
exactly.
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree. How do you feel about the Black Lives Matter movement? Do you think that also fueled the issue as well?
So I think the Black Lives Matter, this is the one thing I will say about the Black community that I've always appreciated.
Okay.
The Black community has always been able to come together and fight for civil rights, fight for their life when it comes to law enforcement. And, for me as a previous law enforcement officer, I was a sheriff deputy.
Oh, and
And, you know, I will tell you that there is injustice in our criminal justice system. It is not a perfect system. It needs to be worked on. And there's been so many instances that we've seen throughout history where it's like, okay, we're finally going to get change in the criminal justice system because of what we just saw on TV, and it wouldn't happen. And we just allowed it to continue until finally we had a boiling point where everybody, because of the pandemic, was locked down, watching their TVs. We saw the murder of George Floyd. And so that started to change things. But when it comes to Black Lives Matter, like, we have to be okay as a society to say, we have not done enough to reform our criminal justice system. And there's overwhelming data to show that Black people are marginalized in the United States when it comes to our criminal justice system, and that we need to fix it. So I support the Black Lives movement. I think where it started to get out of control is that other people started saying, well, white lives matter, Hispanic lives matter, blue lives matter. Well, everybody's lives matter, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the injustice in the criminal justice system, on how Black Americans are in prison more than any other demographic. They're being killed by law enforcement officers at different times of a traffic stop or domestic violence calls, and the use of force is not the same when it comes to other demographics. And it's just that, plain and simple.
And I like the fact that you said that it's plain and simple. I feel like where the BLM movement went wrong is with the defund the police.
Yes.
I think Black Lives Matter and defund the police are two different things, right?
Absolutely.
And I think the course they were on before, first of all, we're not defunding the damn police. Excuse me. That's just not going to happen. But like where they went, like for me, I'm not for police officers not having qualified immunity, because I feel that you wouldn't get anybody who want to be a police officer. If you're personally held accountable and liable for something, then I just don't see how you will opt into wanting to have just basic common sense. Have a job as a police officer, not going home to your family, and an incident could happen and it would make you, and then people could have the right to sue you because you don't have this, you're not covered. Versus I am very much for the registry, where bad cops get on the registry and they get kicked off. And if you don't have your camera on, you're automatically fired. Like, there are certain things that I think are just basic that I think we could do. But the Democrats also didn't they have the House and the Senate? I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. And they didn't do anything about George Floyd.
No.
So I think they lost their voice on it, honestly.
Well, I think like when it comes to, defunding the police, that was absolutely the wrong thing to do, because we still need
police
law and order. Yeah, we need police officers. But what we needed to take that money, instead of defund them, take that and invest that into better training, into better ways of hiring and recruiting the right people into those positions. And also understanding that, like, it's a very taxing job. Like, it is a very stressful job, and you have to make second decisions. And, we're people, we get scared, and so when you look at that type of lifestyle, I've always said this: having a police officer on patrol for 20 straight years is not good.
Really?
Absolutely. Because I will tell you, being in patrol, I had my day on patrol was very similar to many days. You get in your car, you take calls, but everything in between, I've never had the same day. Because you're responding to different situations. You could be responding to a murder scene, child molestation, rape cases, active duty shooters. There's so many things that happen. And some days I never went to work where I wasn't like already 8 to 10 calls down and I had to hurry up.
Oh my God.
So, it's stressful. And so
what's the starting salary for a cop? What's the starting salary for a cop?
So when I started, it was $32,000.
You got kidding me? What?
32,000. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a lot of money. It's not a lot. But just like in any other profession, if you do it for too long, you start getting like sterile to the work, you know. And being a police officer, you start to not have as much empathy because of the fact that well, think about it. When you're starting to see all these terrible things, nobody calls 911 because they're having the best day of their life. It's typically something pretty bad, right? So when you're seeing all of this, you start to become a little bit numb to it. And that's why I think looking at that trajectory, that career path needs to be changed. You know, being on patrol 2 to 3 years, hey, you know what? Now you're going to go work, you know, at an administrative job, right? Or you work at the academy, or you're going to work, being an SRO, school resource officer. You're going to go work, you know, special crimes. But all of these different positions are a path of sort of like promotion, instead of making it a path of a very diverse career within law enforcement.
That is so good, because I don't think people think about it like that. Like, people just think police officers beat cop. They don't, like, my friend's husband he started off as a beat cop, but he moved to an investigator, detective, and then he went into internal affairs. They hated him in internal affairs, but that I don't think people know that there's so many different job options in law enforcement.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's where I think we have to look at it. And, you know, we have to be able to, again, how do we use our taxpayer money to make and support the best officers so that way they can keep us safe? But right now, nothing has really changed in the criminal justice system. I mean, think about the Black Lives Matter movement. Think about the defund the police movement, the murder of George Floyd, and so many other people that we've seen. What has honestly changed in our criminal justice system? What laws have changed? Nothing.
What can we do about that? Because if the Democrats have the House and the Senate, and we know the Republicans aren't going to do anything about it, we suspect that they're not going to do anything about it. How do we bring that change? I mean, I think those two simple things, the registry for bad cops and more training, 3 things, and then also having the police officers wear their body camera as a requirement, I think those things can significantly make an impact. Because I remember growing up, I was having lunch with my daughter yesterday, and I started late, she's a little young, and she was like, "Mommy, who are those people in a uniform?" And I say, "Those are police officers. They protect us." And I just thought about, when I said that, I was like, oh my God, some people would have had a completely different comment for police officers. They wouldn't have said that they protect. And she's like, "Oh, they protect us like Superman." And I'm like, yeah, they're like Superman, but regular people. And then I think, like, some people would probably tear me up in the comments for that statement, because the cops represent so many other things, but we have to figure out a way to get people back. Like, to me, I say teachers should make $100,000. Cops should be right in line with making that much money as well. Because if we can get back to, it's the competition to be a cop, then I think we will get a better candidate of people. Like, one of the things that I used to love in DC, they had a program where cops would get 50% off abandoned properties. It was a way to gentrify the neighborhood, get cops in the community. That would still be awesome now, to bring cops into law enforcement, into communities that most people wouldn't think to go in. So if the crime is really high, you get a bigger discount for being in that area, right? So if 2003 is a bad zip code with high crime, then you give cops more incentive to actually 50% discount on any abandoned houses to move in that neighborhood and live there for 5 years. So I'm just like, there are different ways. That to me is a better use of taxpayer funds. And it also helps because you're less likely to draw a gun when you know Mr. Jones, the old man who's sitting on the corner every day having his cigarette, or the bodega that's on the corner, and her son is, riding a bike and they're outside playing. Like these are people that's in your community. And I personally believe that community supersedes race. A lot of people don't believe that, but for me, that's what I've seen in my life.
Well, I think like a good policy when we think about understanding why do we not have enough Black and brown members of the police force? It's not because they don't apply.
Really?
It's because there's this little dirty secret in law enforcement, and that is the background investigator. So typically what happens is you apply, you go through an interview process, that's 2 or 3 interviews, and then you, in some states, have to do a polygraph, which I've done. In Arizona, you have to do a polygraph, and then you go to the background investigator. Now, the background investigator can automatically disqualify you, and those records are sealed. And once a background investigator disqualifies you, no other department in the country will pick you up because you've been disqualified.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And a background investigator can disqualify you anywhere from 5 years to life. So what would make a background investigator disqualify you? Well, if you've got a criminal record, like let's say you've got felonies, there's certain things that, you just can't, be in order to, you can't do in order to be a police officer. But for many people, many people, never been convicted of a crime. They go to an interview, and then I've seen it. I've heard it. I've had good friends that have told me that they go in and they say, so what did you do wrong here? Blah, blah, blah. You've never been arrested. You never blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what about this fishing incident that you put here? Oh, well, I was like 6 years old, and I didn't know that I needed a fishing license, and blah, blah, blah. Also, you lied on your application. Is that what you're telling me? And they're like,
are
no,
you serious?
I'm not lying, but you're asking me if I've ever done anything wrong. And one thing that I can think of is like one time I went fishing and I didn't get a license, but I was like 6 years old, disqualified. That I kid you not, it happens that easily, and it happens all the time. There are thousands of people that apply to be a police officer, and there's a reason why only 1% of the population ever gets to wear that badge. And so we don't have a perfect system, and it's a system that is very, talk about personal bias and judgment. I mean, I do not like that part of the hiring process. Wow. I don't understand. If you've never been convicted of a crime, and their job is to disqualify you, not to bring you on. You've already passed your interview. You've already done everything. A board of people have determined that you should move on. And now the very last stage is this one person where there's no checks and power on this person, which is the background investigator, can automatically disqualify you.
What? And it's not even like a panel where they can have 3 people. Now that would be reasonable, like 3 people or 5 people and one person cast the deciding vote. Like, because a fishing license, it's like, how many?
That does happen. That's part of the hiring process. But once they pass that part and they go to the background investigator, that background investigator has all the power. No one, not even the chief of police, can override their authority. Those records are kept confidential. It's not up to public to be able to show the public, and it's kept in secret.
That's too much power.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
too much power for one person. Wow. So we have a law enforcement issue, and that is becoming a breeding ground for a lot of white supremacy organization, law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And that is a really big concern. And with this new big, beautiful bill, they've given, I think, DHS or immigration, like
DHS,
more money than the FBI and the CIA combined.
Yep. Now let's talk about that. Yeah. It's crazy. They are using law enforcement with military gear, AR-15s. They're covering their faces. They have no identifying markers of who they are, and they're taking people into custody for what? For a civil violation. That's the thing. Like, MAGA is trying to say when people come over to this country, they already broke the law. And so now they're criminals. And it's like, hey, everybody, listen up. Those people are not criminals. It's a civil violation. In our law, it's a civil violation. So I would like to reverse that to them. So if you go speeding, MAGA, or if you're parking illegally, that's a civil violation. So should I start calling you a criminal because you technically broke the law?
I didn't know that. So there's a difference between a civil violation and a criminal violation.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, see, I don't think people know that. So a civil violation is very like illegal parking or something like that. Absolutely. Immigration. Oh, interesting.
Immigration is the same thing. It's a civil violation.
Oh.
So Democratic Party, right? Why aren't they yelling at the top of the roof to say, hey, Mr. President, stop labeling everybody as a criminal?
Right. Why are they not doing that?
Exactly. This is where they've lost their voice. But this is where I've had many conversations with members of Congress because we came up with a bill called Building America Stronger, which is to secure the workforce in the construction industry, to give them a work visa.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And for some of them, I was getting a little frustrated. This was a couple months ago. Before we ever published this bill, we're feeling on Democrats and Republicans to see what the temperature was for a solution on immigration. And Democrats, for the majority, would say, yes, we believe in immigration reform and, we want all these things to be done. But George, just understand, we have no power. We have no power. There's nothing we can do. They have the majority of the Senate. They have the majority of the House. And that was a very, consistent message. Now that I came up with this policy, presented it to members of Congress, we think it's going to get sponsored both in the House and the Senate by partisan support. But when I sold this to Democrats, I said, hey, you guys need to find your voice and you need to get behind a bill. You need to show that you're coming up with a policy. I said, this yelling back and forth doesn't help anybody. You're not going to, win the midterm election. You need to come up with a solution. And if they don't want to follow you, at least get on every single major news and put a bill on the floor. If they don't allow you to put it, keep yelling at the top of your lungs saying, we have a solution. This is what we want to pass forward. Like, get in front of it. Show the American people you care about immigration. Latinos elected this Congress and this president. If you want that vote, you got to prove that you're fighting for us.
True. And why do you think they elected Donald Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris? Like at the pure, because I've been seeing stuff on social media, like what is and it seems to be like a split within the Latino community about it's nasty. And I'm trying to figure out but I'm not Latino. So I'm asking you what's going on?
Reasons. Yeah, there's several reasons. One is that within our community, we struggle with colorism.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Between white skin, dark skin. I mean, I remember growing up and my mom telling me I'm not scrubbing hard enough because I'm getting too dark. And it's a real thing. Racism in Latin America shows up very different. Like the natives to the land are very dark and they typically are living in poverty. And so people don't want to be associated with having dark skin. And so colorism is a problem in our community. So what do we attract to, right? We attract to that sort of that white supremacy. And so for those that have white skin are often viewed as having more opportunity.
Is that true?
It is true. I mean, it is true. Really? I mean, we struggle with colorism in our community. So when you see a white president speaking with such power, even though some of the things that he says is absolutely ridiculous, but it's very similar to our politics in Latin America. And so when you look at that, people are trying to disassociate themselves. They want to say, I'm part of the in class. I'm not part of the lower class.
Even if it hurts you?
Absolutely. Right? Because you have to understand, so for Latinos, not everybody, for me, I was born here. I'm a second generation. But
Okay.
looking down the line, people right now are third, fourth, fifth generation. For many Latinos, they don't even know how to speak Spanish. They
What?
can't associate. Oh yeah, happens all the time. All
I
the
could
time.
not imagine. Are you serious? But that's the beauty, though, I love about the Latino community. It's like you're so diverse. You could have in one family, you could have someone who's as light and fair as, like a Swedish person, and you
Yeah,
can have someone who's as chocolate and beautiful as someone from, I can't even say from Africa because you have South Africans, but the beautiful chocolate
yeah,
skin. And I'm like, that is so to me just amazing.
right. So
And
within the
going
Latino,
to a part going to a wedding or something, it's it's so you can't even pick the number of shades that you see. That's the beauty within the Latino community.
it is, but again, we do struggle with that colorism because
Wow.
it's all about social status. And so, that's the reason why for many Latino communities, they don't like to get on any sort of government assistance. It's a big no-no. We don't like to get onto food stamps or welfare. They will fight and struggle. That's why a lot of people say, you know what, Hispanics are very hardworking people.
That's true.
And I will tell you, from my experience in social services, it was very difficult to give them benefits because they didn't want it. And
What?
so when we look at that, so for Hispanics and why they voted more for, where we started seeing a rise and more in the conservative movement, colorism plays a part of that. That social class of saying that, hey, I'm an American,
Yeah.
I believe in America, and they sort of have forgotten where their parents came from, their grandparents
Yeah.
came from, or even from themselves. They weren't even born here, but they fought so hard to get here that now it's like, I'm an American.
So how do you reconcile within the Latino community, like the Spaniards
Mhm.
versus like the European Spaniards versus, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, versus Puerto Ricans, which are American citizens, versus people from El Salvador, Mexico, Ecuador. Like, how do you reconcile that within the community?
Well, honestly, that's the reason why we're so divided. Because
Oh,
within the
interesting.
Hispanic community, we have so many different dialects of Spanish. Not everybody speaks Spanish, first of all. Like in Argentina, they don't speak Spanish, or in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's where we can be divided because there are certain labels that are put on us as whether
Mm-hmm.
we're Hispanic, whether we're Latino, whether we're Tejano or we're Puerto Rican. When we think about America, most people don't realize that Puerto Ricans are Americans.
Yeah, people don't know that.
People don't know
Know that.
that.
You go to New York, it's very like Puerto Ricans and Black Americans in New York kind of grow up together. And it's not uncommon for them to married and you see their
Right.
children and stuff. So it's especially in New York, so I guess wow, the fact that people don't know that is really odd to me. But there's a lot people don't know. So do you think it's more difficult for the Latino community to kind of connect with each other versus Black Americans? Because
Absolutely.
Black folks, if you put something down, it's like, no more Target, and we're not doing Target no more,
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to tear each other down. And when we think about also too, like immigration, why
Yeah.
we're so split as a community on immigration is because they don't understand there's a difference between wanting border security and getting criminals out and then deportation. So I think for a lot of people that are conservative, that are Latinos, they're like, hey, yes, we believe in border security, but they thought the president was going to bring some sort of resolution to deportation. They're just like, oh, what he's saying is just rhetoric. That's just the way he is. We're going to get him in power and it's all going to be fine. Now there's a lot of people with buyer's remorse because a lot of those people that supported him have now been deported or their family members have been deported.
That's so tragic to me because you can't undo. So, okay, so that's a good question. Why did not, because, we've been in this, Black Americans have been in this situation with the US for a long time.
Mhm.
And why did the Latino community not listen to Black Americans? Because I know there's some strife and some frustration there within the groups, but why didn't they we were like, we are telling you what he's gonna do. Listen to Black Americans because we've been through this for so long,
Yeah.
So what happened in that situation where they chose to believe Trump versus believe in Black Americans?
Well, don't take it personal. We don't even trust. We don't even trust each other within our own community.
Oh,
so we're not going to necessarily trust somebody else. And
gotcha.
so
Makes sense.
But I want you to think about this. Like I live in white suburbia here, but we have Mexican restaurants. And I will tell you that just 5 minutes from here, there's a Taco Bell on one corner. There is a Mexican restaurant right across the street. Right next to it, adjacent to it, on the same plaza, is another Mexican restaurant. Across the street from that, on the north side, is another Mexican restaurant.
Right.
Half a block down, there's another Mexican restaurant. So why do we do that? Other communities don't do that. For instance, the Arab community, I'm very close with the Arab community here. They work very closely together, and they're, entrepreneurs, and they help each other open up businesses. They will sit down and have community meetings and say, hey, George, you would like to open up a restaurant? That's great. We don't want you to open it up in this part because guess what? We already have that type of cuisine right here. What's better is actually in this block area where there is nothing. And guess what? We can help you establish yourself there. We'll all show up for your grand opening, and we'll continue to support. That is strategically sound, right? And that's the reason why there's such great entrepreneurs. In our community, we don't do that. If I open up a taco shop here, guess what? My competition is going to open one up right next door to it, and then adjacent to it, and sort of go down the line. I kid you not. There's like 6 Mexican restaurants that I can throw a rock and hit.
What? Wow. Well, I'm glad you're sharing that because that does make that makes a lot of sense, because I was just in Glen Burnie and I was like, why are there so many like 5 on the same block? And I was like, that's strange, but that's true. And I have a lot of friends who are South Asian and Indian, and they are very supportive and very community based too, as well. So yeah, I could see that. Wow. So what are the Democrats going to do then? Because they have to figure out a way to bring everyone together. And my concern is they're within the caucus, they have the progressive, and then you have more of the conservative Democratic Party, Democrats. And now, like your AOC and your Jasmine Crockett's versus like the old school Democrats and more senior Democrats, I feel like there's a disconnect and it's confusion, and they don't have a message.
They don't. And this is where there's parties within the party.
Correct.
And what we know is MAGA is the ultra right. And we know there's the super liberal part. But most Americans are not on, either side. They're more of a moderate, because I don't believe, for me as a Democrat, I do not believe that everything that we do is right. There are some conservative values that bring balance, because we have to understand we live in a very big nation. There's a lot of people. We all come from different backgrounds, and we have to honor all of that, and we have to have a well-balanced government. So for me, like that, for the AOCs or for the Marjorie Taylor Greens, it's like, hey, help bring America back towards the center to where we can agree and we don't have to have so much division. But I think within the Democratic Party, it's like everybody needs to get on message. We need to be able to support the same ideas as Democrats, and understanding where is the majority of Democrats at, and start sending that strong message. Because I think what the Democratic Party has done very poorly is that they have pushed certain agendas where it's a very small portion of the population, and they've just pushed that agenda and pushed that agenda, and they're not listening to the overall party. And I think
I
that
agree.
honestly, there's
I
some
agree.
people in Congress that just need to retire. It's time to go. And then there's other people that are just being too divisive. And guess what? It's time for you to go.
Mhm.
And so I think that we need to elect the right leaders and start getting the right message. Stop talking at us and start understanding where we're coming from and
Mhm.
start sending the right message. Because honestly, why am I not hearing more Democrats talk about what everyday Americans are talking about today at their dinner table?
Yeah.
Like for
Good.
me, in my family, it's about immigration.
Yep. That's about
It's,
immigration, though, honestly, it's for everyone. That's the
yeah.
thing that people don't understand. Immigration is for everyone. And I think the reason why the Republicans did win is, even if it sounds crazy what they're talking about, what they're doing, there is a plan. And the fact that the Democrats have kicked this can down down the road for so long, put together a plan. Like, we know we have an issue with childcare. It is obscene. The
Mhm.
average childcare in my community is $2K a month. $2K a month. That's a
Yeah.
mortgage in some places. And then you have senior care, which is a major issue because the middle class now is being sandwiched by children who are still at home playing video games. Not all kids, but some kids are still at home playing video games, or just are still living at home and haven't really gotten their independence. Like, I don't know how you are, but my generation, we left the house. Some of us went to college. The ones who didn't went to trade school, but we left the house at like 21, 20. Now our kids are staying with their parents, and they could be working professionals, college educated, well into their late 20s, because they're not starting their families until later, meeting people later. Everything's later. So it's not uncommon for people to still be at home. And then you have your parents who are living longer. So they're in a sandwich, and it's like you're paying for your bills, then you're trying to help your parents. They're ailing and getting older and more senior. And then you have your kids as well. You're trying to help them. But I feel that senior care is an issue. I have 3 friends now, and they pay full-time salaries. Granted, their financial situation is different than most. They pay full-time salaries for live-in care, $60K a year, just for people to
Mhm.
help offset and take care of their parents. For me, in a lot of communities, people have au pairs where they go to their home country, and they apply for a visa to come and be an au pair for a year or 2 years. My thing is, why can't you do the same thing for childcare, for LPNs, and for senior care? So we have a need, and then if you have people coming to the country and they have the labor, why not leverage that so that people coming to the country, they have a pathway to citizenship, they have a job, you know where they are, and you giving them opportunity? Because when I talked to I think Red Balloon last week, when I did the podcast with the gentleman from Red Balloon, he said they have 8 million jobs. We have so many jobs available now, and you don't have the labor. And that is an issue. So there's a way to make immigration work. I think people are just tired of hearing the complaining. And I'm a person that I can't stand complaining. Like, what's the action? What's the solution? I don't want to hear you complain. But I feel like the Democrats do that all the time. Like, I don't want to hear about
Mhm.
democracy. I don't want to hear about transgender. I don't want to hear. I mean, not saying that I don't hear about it like it's not valid what people say and their passions and their feelings and their emotion. I'm not saying that, but people want solutions for immediate things now in their life:
Absolutely.
housing, immigration, and medical bills. I think those are the 3 things. And get out of what are they doing. I don't care
Mhm.
what they're doing. What are you gonna do?
Well, I think also too, it's looking at what are some of the conservative values too that do work that we can
Correct.
incorporate, right? But we can say we can do it better than you instead of having 2 different paths. What's funny is that us as Americans and immigrants, we all want the same thing. We all
Yeah.
want to live a safe life. We all want to make money. We all want to give opportunity to our children.
Mhm.
We want to live in peace. We all want to have fun, right? We all want the same thing.
The same thing.
But we have two political systems that take two very different paths. So if Republicans say we're going to go right, Democrats are going to say, no, we're going to go left. And, hey, what if the left, or, what if the left was a better path? Why can't Republicans say, you know what, I see value in that, but I think I can do it better than you can.
Yeah.
And same thing for Democrats. I remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president, and there was a whole debate whether a wall or no wall. And for me, I was saying, look, what is the best strategy? I think you need both, to be honest with you, in certain parts of the border. Being a police officer on the border state of Arizona, you could see the problems. We ran into those problems. We knew the humanitarian crisis that was happening there at the border. So you need to take the appropriate action, but it doesn't have to be one option or the other. It could be both. And that's where the messaging, I think, got lost. Just thinking about the wall. Republicans were saying a wall. Democrats were saying, no, we're going to use technology. And it's like, well, why couldn't you have come up with a strategy that incorporates both? And then
so basic.
Come up with a solution for immigration.
Right. But it's so basic. Like, we are literally giving the Democrats their playbook to win. But I'm like, why can't they do it? Like, we already know AOC, I think the gentleman who won in the mayoral candidate campaign in New York, Zohan, I think is his name.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, he's not going to, I would be hard pressed, because anytime when you start a conversation where you don't want police officers, and I'm just thinking to myself, sensible people on the page, not in the margins, right? But on the page, focus on the people on the page. If you focus on the people on the page like us, you can win. But I don't know, for whatever reason, the Democrats cannot do that. They have to go anti-Trump, MAGA, it's just, I just don't know why they just can't focus on a priority. And it's like they let I don't want to say big mouths, because they let the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders, like, they're Bernie Sanders to me. I'm like, Bernie, I get that you want universal health care. I lived in London before, and people who lived in London who had universal health care, they hated it. Not everyone, but there were a lot of people who hated it because they had to wait years to get surgery. And in my day job, I do communications. We worked on the National Health Service Corps contract. And they were short, and the U.S. is short 100,000 primary care physicians. So how are you going to do universal health care when you don't even have enough physicians to do universal health care? And this is the kind of stuff that you can tell is the lack of maturity and experience. Like, I learned so much from you just about law enforcement, where, because I've worked with so many government agencies, I learned so much. And some of these things are just talking points, but how do you implement them, right? Like, how do you get healthcare that's going to be balanced when you have that much of a shortage of physicians? How about immigration for people who are in other countries? There are people now who are in the U.S. who are from Cuba, who are from Africa, who are trained healthcare professionals, but they cannot work in the U.S.
Yep.
And so that's something that's an opening for immigration for people, because we need medical professionals. So it's just so much.
It's all campaign slogans. That's what it is. It's not necessarily the reality of the situation. Like, correct. Do I believe in universal healthcare? Absolutely. I believe that, the two most difficult times of your life will be at birth and at death. And those are the things that all of us have in common. And I don't think that someone should lose their life simply because they don't have accessibility to medical treatment. I don't think that you can put a price tag on anybody's life. But
I agree.
But my fundamental belief, though, is that in order to get to universal health care, we need, exactly like what you said, we need more physicians. Because I can pass a law and say, guess what? All of you have health care now, but we can't sustain it. It's
correct.
Not true. It's not accessibility. It's a cloak of saying we gave you access. You didn't give us access to anything if we don't have enough doctors.
Right.
So I think the campaign slogan, when we think about this, is, again, understanding your demographics. If I want to go after the votes of the healthcare industry, then I should understand what the healthcare industry needs, and I should be pushing legislative that creates more funding opportunities for us to be able to, shorten that gap of physicians that we need in this country, or nurses that we need in this country, or home health care workers that we need in this country. That's what we should be focused on, and just saying, I gave you all insurance.
Right.
Thank you, but that does something for me.
That doesn't and the thing is, for me, I'm like, how amazing would that be, though, to say, in the next 5 years of my campaign, in my next 4 years of my presidency, I will make sure to work with the head of Health and Human Services so we can train 500,000 new physicians to come into and then we can be making, that's the kind of stuff that I feel like the Democrats, I'm like, why are you missing this? We don't care about just the fancy universal health care for everyone. And then people are like, well, hell, I gotta wait 2 years just to get my annual exam, my annual physical, because my doctor is overwhelmed. So, so these are the kind of things. But if you've always been in politics and you never ran a business, you don't know organizational infrastructure, how can you really do that? Versus having someone like you be over Department of Justice, right? Or having someone like me, I don't want to get in politics, like having people who really know, like ALC, she was a bartender and they groomed her to be a congresswoman. But if she was a business owner, I think it would be completely different. And I think it's great to be a civil servant, but I think now we have a lot of problems. And I think we need people who have experience solving problems, whether that's a business owner, whether that's the head of Department of Education should actually be a teacher, like someone who can actually solve problems. And I'm not so sure that people who just do civil service and the people that we have now in Congress and Senate have the bandwidth, the capacity, and the knowledge and the capability to solve problems. I think you have to, it's almost like when I train people on business, I always tell people, I say, it's the difference between a professor telling you and training you based on theory and based on a textbook, versus when you get into a meeting, how to be able to shift and listen to your customers and apply the appropriate tactics and strategy for your clients, completely different. And I think that's what's happening in politics. I think now the stakes are higher. People are smarter, especially with the internet. You just have to, we need better leaders. We do.
But that's the problem with politics right now, is that we're so polarized. And it's all about, it's not even about who's the best person that's qualified to be in these positions. It's all about electability. It's all about how much money can I raise in order to push my message across.
And you think it's still like that, though? You think it's going to be like that in the next 2 years?
Absolutely. When you look at it, again, the political parties are going to push candidates that they think have the ability to win, or what story they can spin. A congressional seat takes millions of dollars so, in order to win. And so when you think about that, who are they pumping money into? They're pumping money into somebody that they believe that can push their narrative or that they can control. And that's of both political parties. But that's their system of politics.
Yeah. There was someone who they were like, oh, she'd be great. I'm not going to mention her name. Oh, she'd be great for president. And I was like, she's not attractive enough. And then people were looking exactly. Like, people were like, oh my God, I can't believe that. I'm like, seriously, she's not attractive enough.
Yeah.
We still live in a society.
Yeah. I've run one political race in my life. And
really?
The one thing I said in a debate is, don't hire me because you think, hire me because you know that I'm the best qualified, but don't elect me because of the fact that I'm a good fundraiser. I'm like, if you want a good fundraiser, you can go ahead and elect my 2 people that are on stage with me. Because honestly, that's what it's about. That's what the media tracks. How much money did you raise?
True.
And so when you think about someone like for myself, I didn't grow up in wealth. I don't know any
Me
wealthy
either.
people, right? Over time, yes, I will have developed those relationships, but again, for the common person, how do you get access to those people that say, like the Elon Musk that say, hey, I'm going to write you a $250 million check because I want you to be president. Those are very difficult hurdles. That's the reason why politics is just so dirty. It's really nasty. It's about the people that have. And, I at times lose hope in our political system, but then there's times where it's like you got to keep pushing forward. You got to, bring awareness, and you got to get people to vote. We need more people to be involved. I don't care whether you're a Democrat, independent, just show up and vote, right?
Yeah.
Vote, because elections have consequences. And if you don't like what's happening right now, then do something about it. Run for office, get people to vote, you vote yourself. And then at the end of the day, we're going to determine whether or not, the wealth gap is going to just continue to increase, or as a society, we're going to be able to uplift each other and live the lives that we all want, which is we all want the same thing.
Well, I think that's fantastic. As we wrap up these last like 5 minutes, because we could go on forever. I feel that it's changing. I think the Elon Musk, I forgot where it was in the Midwest, but he put that money behind that candidate. I'm not going to say who the candidate's name is. And it didn't make a difference.
It didn't.
It didn't make a difference. I think with small donations, I think people, if we can get past the division, which is, okay, what 3 things are most valuable to you? Not becoming a single issue voter, but what 3 things are most valuable to you? It might be immigration on one hand. It might be what's happening in the LGBTQ community. It might be what's happening with housing, with education. For me, is important. That is as a parent, having a public education and getting to where I am now, I know it's not going to be the same for my child, but that is very important to me. So looking at the 3 issues that are important to you, I think that's the first place people should start. I also think a lot of the Democrats should primary Democrats. I do. I think it's time to put the old ones out who are not doing anything. I do think there's something for being seasoned and bringing value. But I think when you get to the point, nothing is status quo now. I think we need to shake things up a little bit, and we need to shake up the Democratic Party. And I think if Democrats can start speaking, not anything anti-MAGA, anti-Republican, but what are your beliefs and how are you going to do it that makes sense? Not just high level stuff, but like in the details. Like I'm going to say this before we wrap up. I did some research on my own because I could not believe that teachers make $30,000, similar to law enforcement. And so when I started doing some research, and it mostly Republican states, believe it or not, teachers are lowly paid. And I say lowly, like between 30 something and 40 something thousand dollars. And then in Democrats, it's a little better, but Democratic led states tend to have higher pay much more for their teachers, usually by $8,000 to $10,000 more. And then I looked at other countries where they pay, it is a privilege and an honor to be a teacher. Like you have to get a master's degree to teach. I'm always stumped. Like, why can't teachers make $100,000? Like, to me, that we don't have a functioning society. No one becomes wealthy. No one, innovation, ideation, creation, all the Ishans are lacking if you don't have good teachers. And the fact that we do not pay teachers, like if I have one thing that I'm really passionate about, it's education. And the fact that we do not pay teachers 6 figures is unbelievable to me, that they have to deal with some people's bad kids and try to teach in some of these schools is just insane. But if we can have an equitable playing field with education in this country, you could probably do away with many of the DEI initiatives, but everyone has to be educated the same. So if you have a qualified, master's degree trained, educated teacher in an inner city school or rural school, the same caliber of teachers that you have in those schools as you have in some of the higher net worth zip codes, it is possible. And I did the research to undo this crazy debt that we have in 20 to 30 years. So it can be done, but you got to invest in teachers. And I think if we could get teachers right, it's going to take some time, but I am hopeful because I think this Generation Z is tired of a lot of stuff, but the Democrats have really got to get their stuff together. And if we don't, I'm not so sure they're going to win the midterms. I think they're going to.
I agree. I think, go into education. I think when we look at what's wrong with our education system is that there's a couple things. One, I would say equity in teaching. There is no equity in being a learner in our education system because our education system is built off the principles of, the manufacturing industry, right? We have equality, right? And teaching kids the same way. But we know as adults, I learn differently.
Correct.
Right? You may learn different from me, but our education system tends to teach people in the same way. That's not equity. But when we look at teachers, even if I were to pay a teacher $100,000, I don't think it's necessarily the wage that's the issue. It's the classroom size. Because if I pay you $100,000 and you got 30 kids in your class,
oh no,
you're not spending the appropriate amount of time. It's a span of control. I mean, just look at business. In business, we say you shouldn't have any more than 12 to 14 people under your supervision because you honestly can't supervise them. Right? But yet we're asking teachers to have classroom sizes of 20, 25, 30 plus kids in their classroom. And for early young learners, they need more hands-on support. So I'd rather pay a teacher $60,000 with great benefits, right? And have a classroom size of 12.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Right? Because then a teacher's not getting burnt out. For every single kid that they do, that's more papers that they have to grade. That's, the curriculum, they have to move fast. So as a student, if you don't get it, guess what? They have to keep moving on. So you get lost in the education system.
Yeah.
Make smaller classrooms, provide other supports that provides equity into learning, but that's supporting the teacher. So that way the teacher can say, I have the tools that I can implement for George to have those visuals that he needs compared to someone else that might not need those visuals, right?
So
but I can manage that because it's a smaller classroom size.
So we're saying smaller classroom size, minimum salary, let's say 65, and then they can merit up to maybe 6 figures. That's a good approach. And I think that's doable. And this is the kind of stuff that the Democrats should be on. Because then it wouldn't matter if I'm in the inner city, right? And I have a law enforcement is living in that city, in that area, because in that zip code, because he's on some kind of special housing program where he moves to the inner city, and we have great education. It doesn't. Everyone is equitable at that point, for the most part. But they got to step up, and they have to do something. They have to come up with some plans, because the one thing that the Republicans do, you're gonna get bigger tax money back. They're clear on what their plans are. It may just not be for everyone else, but they're clear on what their plans are. And I just feel like the Democrats, they got a lot of work to do. But we're going to see what happens in the midterm, and then we're going to come back after the midterms and follow back up and see what happened. Hopefully, it'll be something positive.
Absolutely, the Democrats definitely need a plan.
George. Yeah, they definitely need a plan. Well, we gave them a lot of plan and a lot of options here. So I'm about, I tell you, I'm about solutions. And I think we solved law enforcement. We came up with solutions for immigration. We came up with solutions for education. Smart people should be listening to this podcast and you and I and saying, okay, let's play that and see how that works out in the focus groups.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on.
So much. Thank you. It was so much fun. And I learned a lot. And that's what we're all about here at All Americanish, learning sharing, growing, just looking out for each other.
Absolutely. Well, I hope a lot of people watch, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yes, let's keep it going. I appreciate you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
So what did you think? Let me know what you would do different with law enforcement. How do you feel about what's going on in the Democratic Party now? Do you think they're going to win the midterms? I don't think so. And as you can hear, I don't know if George really thinks so either, but I'd like to know what you think. And if they're not going to win, why? And what do they need to do to win? So again, this is All Americanish. We don't pick sides. We are politics for the people. And our goal is to really just foster conversation and make sure that your voice is heard. So let your voice be known. Leave a comment. Thank you so much for tuning in. Love you guys. Stay safe. Love each other. Bye.